You're listening to Sam and Carl on PSH Radio. Voices of the Paranormal.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We apologise. We are obviously PSH Radio Show, but when the first time we went live, no one could pick us up. So hopefully this time it works. So good evening, Carl.
Good evening, Sam. Yeah, sorry to everybody that was listening at 9 o'clock. As always with live radio, sometimes the gremlins, the little whatsits come out to play, and they were obviously playing because we were in full flow of the interview, and we didn't even know we weren't actually live. So
we're all good, by the way. So
that's great. So thanks for everybody. And like I said, I do apologise about that little technical hitch that we had. So today's guest, I saw this gentleman back in 2019 when I was lucky enough to attend Salem Con. And I sat through his talk with a few other people, talking about the paranormal, talking about all subjects, and I was enthralled. And as soon as the talk was over, I knew I had to get this guy on. He's a good friend of ours as well. So welcome, James Annitto.
Hello, guys. How you guys doing?
Yeah, pretty good. Sorry about that. We were.
No, it's all right. Hey, technical difficulties happen. There was a time that the show, a few times the show actually never was able to happen because of weather issues and stuff like that. So
yeah,
it is what it is. Things happen, you know.
Yeah,
but the show must go on, right?
Exactly. There's little creatures out there not trying to throw curveballs at us, but we're doing well. So just to let you guys know, we got James Annitto on. Just for the people listening, James, do you want to just give a quick overview of who you are, and then we'll crack on to the more in-depth questions in a moment?
Yeah, most definitely. So my name is James Annitto. I've been involved in the paranormal for 15 years. I am a deacon with the United States Catholic Church. I am a demonologist that works with Carl Johnson, a part of Duodemonology, which is a research unit, and also a lecture unit. We do lecture together, and we also work on cases together. And basically started off as a hobby that really, through 15 years of time, went from a hobby to something that is basically a passion of mine. It's a career, of course, a non-paying career. I don't charge for what I do. But it's a love that I have that's generated from seeing the many different investigations and hauntings and different other avenues of the paranormal, as well, in the aliens and Bigfoot scenarios as well, that have really accumulated to what it is today in my life, and the love I have for it and the things that I get to see. And even though sometimes dark, but even in a dark tunnel, there's always a light at the end of it. So that's what's important. And I basically the past 15 years as a roller coaster in this field and of course in life. But 15 years of great times, and of course meeting you at Salem Con. Mm-hmm. It was one of those great moments. So, I've had the pleasure of 15 years of being in this field and loving every single moment of it.
And everybody, well, I was gobsmacked when I found out it was 15 years, because you just don't look old enough to be in the field for 15 years. You have such a young face, so to speak.
Well,
and I was just blown away because you started when you were very, very, very young, didn't you?
Yeah, correct. So I'm 30. Well, I'll be 30 this June. And I started when I was basically on the cusp of 15 years old. My birthday's in June, and, I started getting involved in this kind of as, a teenage thing, a hobby thing. It wasn't to do bad things. It wasn't to go desecrate graves. It was to research history, see what we could get. But it was also accumulation to people that grew up loving Unsolved Mysteries, Scooby-Doo, the scariest places on Earth, most haunted, and things like this that accumulated to the possibilities of like something like Ghost Hunters, which I'm from Rhode Island. So I believe Ghost Hunters came out 13 years ago, and maybe a little longer than that now. But still, that was a huge catalyst too. As a teenager, seeing that on television and wanting to incorporate more into my life, but I've been involved into the paranormal some way and format and study since a young childhood. I had questions in a preternatural sense with God, if God existed, and not to get too religious on your show, but it was a launching point for me to get involved in researching the unknown and seeing if it could lead me to a possibility of understanding God. So, and it really has,
So when you first started, were you going like with some friends, just going to spooky places, or were you even at that stage looking and researching the different activities in the paranormal, and that fueled your interest, or was it just let's go and there's a creepy place at the end of the road, let's go and have a look at it and then go from there? Or was it you knew after watching these programs, you knew this is something that you're going to have a passion for, that you wanted to see where it went?
I think it's a little of both. I think it started off as a hobby at first. I thought it, like a thrill ride, like a roller coaster ride, like it was something to do for fun, to get out with your boys, and of course, you hung out with girls as well. But we get together with your collective of friends and to do this thing. Sometimes I'd go by myself. Sometimes it would be to cemeteries or graveyards. There is a difference, people. But there's also places that were abandoned where I shouldn't have gone. I don't condone it to this day. It was out of curiosity. Mm-hmm. There are ways to get into places with permission, and you should seek permission. Of course, I was young, adolescent, so I of course knew better, but I didn't care at that time. So I went into these places and went in with friends, but it wasn't, like I said, in desecration. It was in history. Basically, why I started getting involved, even though it was in a short-term basis at first, was because of my questions about if I could experience what people call ghosts or spirits or whatever you want to call it, through the aspects of human civilization. Maybe it could, like I said, come closer for me to understanding what God is. And that took a long time. Like I said, I got involved at the cusp of 15. I didn't really have that experience with understanding until like 19, 20 years old. So there was a lot of years in between. But really what was the driving point of going from more of a thrill / okay, there's history to this. I did research. Back then there was libraries. It wasn't, we were a little bit more technologically advanced. But, we still had flip phones. And it wasn't to the prowess of nowadays. And, we did go to libraries, and I did read books by Hans Holzer, Ed and Lorraine Warren. I read this literature. I was enthralled with it. I watch Unsolved Mysteries like a madman. So I wasn't thrilled with it in all aspects of it. But really what led me to it was getting into residentials, and then getting to a case where even though we did maybe get something of the possibility of data, and we presented it, the person was scared and wanted it gone, and that was a catalyst to me kind of getting into where I'm at now, because it was like how can I help this person any further? They're scared, and it was something I couldn't understand. How could I go further?
Yeah, because it always fascinates me, because I've spoken to quite a few people in the field about when there's that moment that you realise we're on this crazy paranormal path that we're all on, where your junction are that take you certain ways. And obviously you are a demonologist, and you're a deacon of the old Catholic Church. How sort of did that sort of... What point was your fork that you went down that that road where this is what my passion is going to be put into more than just normal paranormal investigating?
Well, so like I said, it really started as a child. I went through childhood trauma that made me doubt God. I hate to keep saying it because I know it's a sour taste in some people's mouth, but it really was the catalyst of this. And basically, I went through a lot of childhood trauma, and I really asked myself. And I was raised, baptized Catholic. My grandparents who adopted me were, Lutheran, so they went to church a lot. So, but something I always questioned myself as a child that shouldn't question themselves as a child was, why would this be done to me? And why would God allow this to happen to me? Which I think a lot of people have those questions sometimes. And it really led me down a theological pathway of researching theology, Darwinism, evolutionism, the Big Bang Theory, science. So I really started dabbling into books at a very young age. So it really enthralled me. And of course, the television shows, that enthralled me as well. And it's something that was all collective. So, but really what was the tipping point, like I said, was that residential case. But another big tipping point was my partner, Carl Johnson. For people who don't know who Carl Johnson is, and, he's been in the media a lot lately. He was, with his brother and Donna of Pyro. They were the first investigators in the Conjuring House in Harrisville, Rhode Island, which is a big explosion right now. And so I was in, like I said, I watched Ghost Hunters. Keith and Carl were on the first 2 seasons. I was, by that time, probably 18 years old. I was running my own group because nobody would bring me into their group. Of course, now there's probably hundreds of teams in the smallest state in the country. Back then, there's probably 10, if that, back then. So, there was really nobody going to take on a young kid. So I met up with a bunch of people. 2 members actually were on the episode Demon Attack on a Haunting. They're part of a group called Rips. And 2 of them left their group, and we created a group called Ghost Hunters of Supernatural Truth. Ghost. Brilliant. But so I started a team with them, and Andre had worked with Carl on that case, and I had looked up to Carl because I was always enamored with theology, even though I was still questionable in God. I was still enamored in it. I was still enamored that this guy's a demonologist. I loved King James demonology or demonology. I read that as a kid, and even though that book was like 1600s, and of course the Maleficent, which is even an older book in 1437, I do believe, and I read that as a kid. So I was interested in demonology. It was a madman, and so I got to talk to Carl Johnson, and I'm very good with technology. I used to build computers. I originally had a certificate in Cisco networking through doing CCNA courses. And I really loved networking, and I really loved technology. Even went to school for computer programming. Did not finish, but I went. And so I was very enthralled in technology, and I was very enthralled in paranormal equipment and the possibilities of what it's capable of. And so even though the co-founder of my group of ghosts, I was very involved with setting up technology. And I eventually got invitation from Carl Johnson and Dina Palazzini of that time of Beyond the Veil Paranormal to be Beyond the Veil Paranormal's tech manager. And I said, hell yeah. I said, hell yes. And Carl's been a demonologist for so damn long, and that really was a tipping point. I was saying, this is what I want to do. I want to be like this man. I want to be like his brother. I want to be like like a lot of the other icons. And it's not to be an icon. It's just because I look up to these people. I think their knowledge and their understanding of different levels of hauntings, if you really listen to these people, are very eye-opening. And, of course, opinionated in some aspects. But that's when you have to also look at it in your view and your faith and your viewpoints and generate it as yourself and do your self-research. But, I've gotten to work with a lot of these people, like John Zaffis or Ralph Sarchi. I've gotten to talk to these people. I get to work with Carl Johnson hip to hip, basically. So, basically that was the tipping point. It was something that I could say, okay, I see what this is now. I understood demonology, but I didn't understand what was a demonologist. Never met one. I read about them, but I never knew what it was until I met Carl.
And what would you say to somebody that's listening that probably is in the same sort of boat as you were back then, when they think of a demonologist? What is the stuff that people should know about a demonologist that probably isn't more common knowledge about it?
Run, don't do it. But in all seriousness, is most people think, and some of the things that I get in emails and messages is some of the things demonologists ain't or aren't. If you speak proper English, I don't sometimes. So, but basically, is that I'm not an exorcist. I am also not a Satan worshiper.
Yep.
A Luciferianism or Satanist. I do not belong to the Church of Satan. I do not conjure demons. I do not use the Goetta to summon demons. So I don't do any of that stuff. That's what a demonologist is not. But what a demonologist is in reality is a person that studies, in Carl Johnson's definition, is studies the lore and cultures of wicked spirits. And a simpler version of it is the study of demons and evil. Mm-hmm. But that's the study. Where Carl and I talk about is we're applied demonologists. So basically we take our studies of theology, if not our backgrounds, our certificates, our degrees, take our backgrounds in certain other aspects. Some demonologists have psychology backgrounds. Exorcists have psychology backgrounds. An exorcist is a demonologist. A demonologist is not an exorcist. But so we take our backgrounds and we apply our study of demonology and we associate it to what has been put out forth before us presently and what we come across personally, and we equate it to what it could possibly either if it is preternatural or natural, and we determine if it is, of course, demonic, wicked, natural. So many different possibilities. We could also possibly pertain it to be psychological, where we believe that they need a psychological assessment. Yeah. And as a deacon with the Catholic Church, the United States Catholic Church, when I approach a case and if it is something of involvement of somebody claiming they are possessed, the first thing that they require is a psychological evaluation if they claim it. So there's so many steps. So that is what a demonologist is to me. Or applied demonologist is to me. It's somebody that takes a study and their backgrounds and apply it. With me, I apply it into the method where I research a case. I get involved with the case. I get involved with physicians, psychologists, doctors of any method. And I present this collective of data and files to the church, and it goes through the bishops, and it goes to an exorcist. And if it's deemed worthy for, if there's no natural causes that could to discern to what is going on, then there's the steps of the Romus Ritualis, which is the solemn rite of exorcism, and that's when that process happens. So basically a demonologist, in an easy way for people to understand, is a mediator, where we mediate between a homeowner or investigating team to, in my format, I mediate between that and the church.
Yeah, because I think, as all things in paranormal, there's a lot, because as we talked earlier, when we were discussing, like, starting early, you see TV, you see the TV programs, and a lot of people that don't know what, say, a paranormal investigator or a researcher does, what a demonologist does, will have their blinkered view of the Hollywood view of it.
Of course.
So you're walking in, cross in hand and all that sort of stuff for the demonologist, and then everybody thinks that we're on the researcher or the investigator, so we're all like Aaron Goodwin and all of these guys are off TV, and we're just before the first ad break we've got 4 apparitions and 24 EVPs. So I think that is something in the field which I find fascinating now, that is to try and open up and actually tell people what we do in the industry, instead of letting them rely on the Hollywood side of it.
Yeah.
You've just explained what you do as a demonologist in a very great way, because I think people will understand that more. Because I think a lot of people think a demonologist is literally somebody like you see on The Exorcist, the guy that walks in, opens his medical bag, and away you go. Because I think a lot of people do think a demonologist, they also do the exorcisms and all this sort of stuff. But like you say, that's part of it, but they're not the same thing. So I think the way you've explained it, James, I think that's really, really good.
I think it's appropriate too, because I really have been studying demonology since a young age, and have been associated to the demonologist title since a very young age, the early 20s. And one of the things I always battled was my youth. I have that young face, but in fact I am really young. And one of the things that I was always told, you got to keep learning. If you're associating as a demonologist, and this is where I've also seen it, if you associate as a demonologist, and it's not like we're anything special, but there is certain different steps to certain different things, and a paranormal investigator and researcher could be very well versed in the paranormal. Look at it like a Harry Price, a Hans Holzer. But a demonologist is well versed on the paranormal, but well versed on theology, well versed on hamartology, which is the study of sin, evil, many different things. And we're well versed in a little bit of different formats. But that doesn't mean that paranormal investigator can't. But the people that are associated with that title are to be held in regard where they are well versed. And I don't know everything. I'm not an expert. And the problem is the paranormal is not it is looked at as a pseudoscience field, and really none of it is fact, if at all empirical. And the thing is, but a demonologist, there's too many people think it's a cool title and get into it for the wrong reason, and you really do experience some things that really shape the core of you, and you do play with people's lives. And some people go in there thinking that they're the exorcist and ruin people's lives. There was a team in Florida that had this girl burnt because that's what they told her that they would do, that to get the demon out. So there's things like this that happens. Even in true protocol exorcisms, death happened. Look at Annalise McKell. That's a famous case where death occurred, where, even though there was some improper things that occurred, but it was documented. There was documentation of what was occurring. So even in these processes, death occurs. So if you're negligent and you're going in there and telling people things, even though you're a demonologist, and telling people that they're dealing with a demon, and in fact, there is no characteristical form to it beside one thing, maybe like scratching or something. If there's no other presences to it, and you're calling it a demon, then you're doing injustice to the person you're dealing with, because you're giving them an instant fear. You're heightening the situation that can heighten and be worse. And you have to understand how you're dealing with and talking with people, and that's what a demonologist is. Too many people like to throw it around, and I've made many mistakes. I can't say I have not, because I'm a person, but you do your best to learn from them. And I think that's what a demonologist is for people that are listening. You have to be respected, and you have to give respect back.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head when a moment ago when you said you're constantly learning. I'm constantly learning for the path that I'm on with the technology side and my research. And like you say, we're only human. We make mistakes. I've made mistakes in the past. Yep. I've learnt from them. I've tried to put them behind, and just moved on from them. So, and I know that at the end of the day, what do they say? It's the squashy human side that is the most fallible thing, but it's also the better thing as well when it comes to exactly. It's when it comes to that it's quite interesting, because I like that when you were saying that you also like to when you talk to the case and you talk to the people involved, and like say if they say they're possessed, you ask them to undergo a psychological review, because I've read stuff and looked at stuff where these people are believing it, and people will prey on that and they will fuel that belief in it, and it will
charge lots of money. I do it for free.
Yeah.
People make thousands of dollars off of it. It's crazy to me. Like, I could be a millionaire right now. In fact, I could be a millionaire. There's one thing that I could factually say about the paranormal field. I could be a millionaire right now if I was a deceptive, egotistical, narcissistic person. But the problem is, like you said, you're feeding on people's emotions, and that is wrong. And I don't do that. I do it for free. I drove to Arkansas and for people that are UK listeners, Rhode Island to Arkansas is a 22-hour drive.
Yeah, and trust me, that is a long drive.
It's a long drive.
That's a long drive. So
you have to be willing to be that kind of person.
Yeah.
You know, I once had an ego doing this, but I quickly learned and received my piece of humble pie that, you know, I'm not untouchable, and you always have to continue learning that you're not the number one, you know, because for a time, you know, I don't know if there's a history of demonologists, but, you know, some used to say that I was the youngest demonologist ever, you know, be, you know, and I laughed at it, and some said it in a meaningful way, and some said it in a really good way, but I let that get to my head out of youth. And it really did bite me on the butt, and that was from a case. I approached the case wrong, and I approached it like I should have not have, and I deserved everything I got from it. It was a lesson.
Yeah, like I said, we're only human.
Yeah, definitely.
We have to,
but it's important.
It is important. You've got. There's nobody in life that goes through their journey of life that they can put their hand on their heart and say they have not made any mistakes or made a judgment of error or anything, because we are human. We're fallible. So anybody that stands up, and I say it on the show quite a lot, anybody that stands up and says they've never made a mistake, not just in the paranormal but in their life, I would say that they're blowing smoke from certain orifices of their body, because we're human. We make mistakes. But the thing is, and which I think which we do quite well, is you learn from them.
Yeah,
and that's the key mistake.
That's the key definition of experience.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Sam, I believe you've got a question from the chat room.
Yeah. Before I ask of the question, I'll first, if anybody is tuning in, guys, we do have a chat room available. If you on the link, you can quickly sign in if it works, because sometimes it doesn't work. If you want to be involved with the chat or ask questions, so this is obviously a question to you, James. Jonathan asks, what has been your biggest paranormal experience?
So I'll hit it on a 3-point, because everybody wants to hear me talk about demonology, but I'm very enthralled in the paranormal in general. So I had a Bigfoot experience. I do believe, I don't know if it really was Bigfoot, but it follows the characteristics of Bigfoot. My 5 seconds of fame that nobody knows was I was on Finding Bigfoot for 5 seconds. But it was more stabilized around Little Rhodey and, of course, Dina Palazzini at that time. But I had a Bigfoot experience at this cemetery that I would particularly always go to. It was my place that I would do training, for people to understand contamination. And me and a bunch of friends were at a gravestone that was located near a bunch of brush, and this brush would lead to a bunch more brush, and of course to woods. And we seen this, and I'm 5'11", so I have a pretty good understanding of height, and of course, like I said, I do construction, and at that point it really wasn't, but I've always been some understanding of measurements. And this thing was probably, I would say, another foot taller. So I would say about 7 foot, if not taller. And it had red gleaming eyes. And it startled us. And we, it was that moment where I would say it was the fight or flight. And that time, I did not want to fight. I didn't want to see what it was. I fled because I almost nearly pooped myself. So that was one of the most frightening moments on where I believe I dealt with the cryptid. And there has been previous sightings and experiences within that area and within that square mileage area, or whatever you guys look at in the UK. I forgot kilometers, meters, in a kilometer or meters. It was in that area. It has been involved with a lot of sightings and experiences. So that was frightening to me. And I never really knew that before I dealt with that experience, and then I started researching it. UFO experience I actually had, or something of extraterrestrial understanding, was where I was brought into a case. And it wasn't the most frightening case, but it was probably frightening in the ability that kind of led me to believe that maybe something beyond spirits do exist. I was brought into this case because a lot of forms of possession, characteristical forms of possession, were shown to be happening. Loss of time. Basically, it sometimes would speak in weird mumble. Was starting to distance themselves from their family and friends. Starting to become moody and non-transparent. They were starting to pick up habits that they'd never had. So all these characteristical forms of demonic possession were happening, and that was what was frightening, because I thought, okay, this could be real. And I've really truly only dealt with 3 demonic possession cases, and of course we'll get to that at the third one. But this whole time I thought it was demonic possession. I was on that case for almost a year, if not longer, and I started kind of piecing the things together and saying, okay, there is no no hate for religious objects. This person's complaining about something being in their arm. They're having flashbacks of these figures looking at them. And I'm like, oh, this sounds crazy. And mind you, this person sees a counselor. This person, I was told, was pretty sound. They didn't seem like there was anything beyond the measures where they felt like this person was crazy, deserved to be in a padded room, deserved to be heavily medicated. So it didn't seem like this person was lying, and would tell a story, and the people associated with them tell the same story. Like there was red flags, but anytime that you hear things about demonic possession, there's red flags that pop up, at least in my brain. And with all these things, I initially kind of folded, and I think this is the best thing that people need to do is when you don't understand a situation, you get other people involved. Yeah. And I brought, in my function, I listen to my gut, and if I don't listen to my gut, usually it's not the greatest thing in the world that occurs. I think a lot of people have that ability. But I didn't listen. I listened to my gut this time, and I never heard anything much further, which is usually a good sign. But I actually got MUFON involved, which handles UFO sightings and abduction cases in the United States. And I don't know if MUFON's out in Europe, but
there's a UK version. There's a UK part of MUFON. Yeah.
Okay, cool. And so MUFON, I got MUFON involved, and of course, when MUFON gets involved, they usually, if you're not involved with MUFON, they tend to shut you out of the case, because they don't like with what I deal with. You don't want too many handlers on a case because you don't want misadvice going forth, and this happens a lot where people shop teams, and there's 10 teams involved with one client, especially in the United States, and all these 10 people are giving different advices, and it confuses the client. So MUFON came in, and I gracefully gave them the case, and they shut me out and never heard anything further than that. But I really definitely believe that person was dealing with alien abduction at the later stages of that case. So that was frightening because it led me to believe that something beyond Earth does exist in a science fictional state kind of format. And my third one would be my first true involvement with demonic possession, where a psychologist brought me in. And this was the very first time I ever dealt with demonic possession. So that in itself was frightening. But one of the things I would say that was the most powerful thing about that, and this is where I was a faithful man at that time, and still am, is it actually made my faith stronger instead of demoralized me. But the one thing it did, it made me believe demons do exist because of all the things that I had seen. The eyes went black, the face started deforming, methods beyond normal adrenaline, and certain different other things that people had experienced there that I felt there, what other people felt there. And I don't necessarily say I have any clairvoyancy or sentiency or any ability at all. I don't claim that at any point in time. But we felt something there. And it was very heavy. I felt like I was getting punched in the solar plex. And seeing all the exhibiting signs of demonic possession, and then, of course, being brought in by a psychologist is pretty frightening in itself.
How early in your career was that?
I was basically pretty early into my demonology. I would say within the first year or so of me going out on my own, because unfortunately life happens. Carl and I had separated for a while. We had went our separate ways, even though he had mentored me early on. We had went our separate ways, and I started researching myself and working with other people like Father Bob Bailey, and working with other demonologists and researching as much as I can. So I would say probably within the first year. So I would say if I had to give you a good take, maybe 22, 23. It's not spot on, but pretty young,
You very like you say, that's pretty young to be immersing yourself into that sort of area, that sort of case. But this is something else that fascinated me when you were doing your talk at Salem, was the amount of cases that you've taken part in, and
like 400 plus.
Yeah, 400 plus. And as I think we said a moment ago when we were talking about Hollywood, the Hollywood effect, you're saying you've done 400 plus, but you say there's possibly 3 cases that you've worked on which were demonic.
No, 3 demonic possession cases.
Demonic possession.
I, through my opinion and through other members of people involved, and of course, people that hold a doctorate or are very intelligent, experienced that. So yeah, I would say 3 demonic possessions that went through those states, and I would say anywhere from 5 to 7 demonic cases, so either oppression or an infestation, but still 7 cases or 5 cases. And why I say 7 is because, and it confuses some people, there's 2 cases that even though it's been years I've been saying this, I'm still on the fence about it, but they exhibited a lot of the signs of it. But it's something that it could be something else, but I'm not true to say. So let's say 5. So 5 cases out of 400 cases, though, 400 plus cases. It shows you the rarity of these things.
Oh yeah, exactly. That's that's what I was trying to.
I know
because there's the thing is that, like, everybody says, oh, you're a paranormal investigator. You must experience spirits, ghosts, whatever you call them, every time you go out. And I would say I wish I did. There's a lot of time of me sitting in a dark, damp, abandoned building, caves, castles, jail cells, talking to myself in the dark.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that's where this Hollywood effect comes in. And like you said, paranormal investigators on TV, that people think that when as soon as you say you're a paranormal investigator, they do think literally that you do what you see on TV. And the same with your side, because they think, oh, you must do it week in, week out. But the numbers from the amount of cases you've done to the amount of nasty whatevers is a small percentage of the amount of work that people do that you've done in the past.
Yeah, and you know what the crazy thing is too, Carl, and I tell a lot of people this, and I think this is where it's hard people to swallow. I would say I have changed differently if you listen to interviews, and I've been doing interviews and lecturing for like 10 years now. So you can, YouTube and people that want to listen to shows, I have adversely changed my opinions and have been involved with things that have exploded the beyonds of reality that I can understand at that point in time. So I've experienced these different things, and that's what the paranormal does to you. But I would say that everything I have dealt with, 99% of it has been natural causes, either psychologically or misunderstood parapsychology, where we self-manifest, topas, thought form, poltergeist, whatever you want to call it. I tend to believe that we enamor and create things more so, or allow things to happen more so than what we believe. And a lot of the cases that I dealt with that were claimants of demonic possession were unfortunately cases of psychological ailments that they had. And I'm not saying that what they were dealing with was not happening, but it wasn't demonic. Their ailments and their disabilities were making it so to the fact that they believed it was demonic, and it was in so fact affecting them emotionally, physically, and mentally. Even though they were dealing with something preternatural or supernatural, paranormal. But I really look at things as 99% natural, and it really takes for me a lot to say that is something of the paranormal. And in fact, even though I do love to investigate here and there, I in fact hate investigating. I find it boring nowadays. And it's not because I still don't love it. It's just because I've come to a respect to understand is that I might never find the answer what a ghost is, but I have an opinion on it, and to me that's good enough. But I'm always willing to learn and hear other people's opinions. Like some of the new equipment I haven't worked with, but usually when equipment comes out, I try to get my hands on it and use it and come to an understanding of why it's being used, what the methods of this understanding of it, why it's used. And if I think it's a crock of shit, I don't use it because I understand science to a method, to a small understanding compared to some scientists. But I also understand things within CFMs and how air works and how EMF works because I work in construction. You know, I know some electricity background. You know, I've done wires in my own house, plumbing my own house. You know, I've come to the builder's background, so I know what these equipments do and what their methods are and what they were originally used to do. So I look at these things, but I also use psychics and mediums because I want to take their point. I've worked with people that I believe have this ability that have shocked me and should have not ever known this if they were the best cold reader in their life, if they were like that show where he can read your face and he knows your whole life history, you know. But maybe people like that do exist, but some of these things were beyond the reality of that possibility. A facial emotion of explaining, and they still were able to hit those ketones. So these things do occur, but I don't understand what it is. So it's hard for me sometimes to explain with what we deal with. You know, everybody wants to say this is what a ghost is, but like Brian Kano says, who is a great man, and I respect him admirably, and he's my Star Wars brother. I heard him say on an interview on television one time, which is crazy on television, right? The one place you would say, you would think, oh, this is what a ghost is. Yes. So you sound intelligent, and you get the ratings. But the best thing he said is, I don't know. And that is the best answer I can give as well. But I can go based upon theories and ideas of people like Thomas Edison and Charles Babbage and Charles Dickens, of the Ghost Club and all these other smart people that have come before me, and try to piece it together. And I think I've done a little bit of that. But like I said, I think where my shift is, instead of trying to come up with an answer, I try to take with what I've experienced and with what I dealt with and what I know, and continue to learn and try to use it to help people get out of the slump they are in. Yeah, you know. So I think is more important.
I think you're absolutely right, and I totally respect what Brian said when he said you don't know, because I think in this industry there's a lot of people, sadly, if they don't know, they will basically just spurt out anything. And it takes a lot of backbone and a lot of self-belief to actually stand up and say, I don't know.
I have a key idea of what demons could be, but I truly have, besides in a person, I do believe, I have never seen, of course a demon doesn't have a physical representation by lore. They are pure spirit form, but I never had a demon stand in front of me that I know of, beside, of course, through a person where I still believe that this occurs, but I'd never had a demon coming forth in front of me or hundreds of people. And, legitimately it could be disproven. That's not possible. It has not happened. So it's, to prove that what a demon is hard, but there has been, like I said, literature and things that I've experienced that other people have experienced. So you have to take that. You have to learn, and you have to be willing to learn other people's opinions. Definitely.
You've got to take on everybody's opinion, and you've got to keep on learning, because, as we said numerous times in this, there's no experts in the paranormal field. There are people who have experience and that are knowledgeable, very knowledgeable, and I think that's more important in my eyes. Yeah. When somebody says they're knowledgeable, or they have a reputation in being knowledgeable in the paranormal, the ones that sit in their ivory towers shouting out, I'm the best, I'm the best, I'm the best, and this, that, and the other, they're 10 a penny, to be truthfully honest. And America is exactly the same as the UK. There are people in this field which do like blowing their own trumpet and making them out whatever. But like a good friend of mine said, that you can have somebody been in the field 50 years, and you can have somebody that's been in the field 5 minutes, which they can have a discussion, and the person who's been in 5 minutes might say something to the person that's been in 50 years.
They never heard.
And they thought, hang on, I've never thought about it that. So they're then learning from that. And I think that's the key about this field. James, we have another question in the chat room. Sam, what we got?
This one is from Alex. He asks, do you have any go-to equipment that you use during any investigations?
Oh, that's a good one. So, like I said, I do investigate, but there are rare occurrences. Most of the time, I get brought into cases. I do baseline readings, but a lot of the things that have been presented to me by an investigation team that I respect and have worked with before, usually, and they accumulate the data and have video, audio, all this stuff presented to me already, and I go in, of course, meet them physically, review these things, go through a multiple different interview process. But my favorite piece of equipment to this day would still always will be the tape recorder. I love old analog, but I also like my digital recorder as well. I think EVPs are some of the most fascinating aspects of paranormal phenomenon, because even though people do theorize that digital recorders and, of course, tape recorders are able to intercept audio waves in the air, which is a possibility. Baby monitors, that happens through an antenna, and in some way a digital recorder has an antenna. So there's possibilities of that, but so for some of the intelligent questions that have been received, so I think the digital recorder or the tape recorder, and because I love analog, would probably be my most favorite piece of equipment. But I've used like the SLS. I respect it. I've gotten some stuff off it, but I'm not the biggest supporter of a ghost box. But people have gotten phenomenal stuff off of it. I just have my own opinion of it. But I've worked with a lot of the certain gadgets out there. But yeah, definitely I would say the digital recorder. And hell, even when I started off as a hobbyist, I loved Harry Price. So even when I started doing residential cases and didn't have all the bells and whistles because I was a young kid and didn't have all the money, I would use baby powder if the homeowner allowed it. Use bells on doors and use like homemade gadgets that you can use to try to help detect if these things were possible. So I like that stuff as well, but definitely, like I said, the digital recorder or tape recorder.
Cool. Anything else going on in the chat room, Sam? I know it's quite active, and just saying if there's any comments that you want to ask James. We've got about another 10 minutes of the show left to go. So do drop your questions into the chat room. So when you get in there, there's a little bubble. Just click on that, and you'll be able to post questions, and Sam will ask the questions.
So my question to you, Carl, and of course Sam, if both of you. But if when's the next time you come in here? Once this is all, do you have an idea? Because we definitely have to catch a drink. That's my question to you. You have to answer it now on the spot.
Okay. Me personally, I am praying and hoping that Michigan Paracon happens.
Yes, I hope so too. But I'm not there this year.
Yeah, I'll be at Michigan in August as a paying punter, as we call them in the UK. But I'm sure I'll be having a few drinks with certain people who are actually speaking. So. That'd be good. And then there'll probably be other trips, possibly, because I do love going to Las Vegas. There will be a Las Vegas trip. But then I will be back at Salem next April in 2021.
Oh, that's a long time, Carl. I might have to go to Las Vegas with you. I've never been. Let's do it.
You'll enjoy Las Vegas. But Michigan... Yeah, there's possibilities. But I'm sure if I'm somewhere close to Rhode Island,
you just denied me Las Vegas. Oh, Carl, I have to sign off.
Sam will explain what Las Vegas is like for me, because Sam's been on a couple of trips to Las Vegas, and I will disappear. I will just. I need certain things. I need like a day where it's not to be. Don't want to do any touristy stuff. I don't want to go wander up and down the strip. All I want to do is sit, drink, and gamble.
There's nothing wrong with that, man.
But yes, well, Sam, I think you're coming to Salem, aren't you?
Yes.
Nice.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah. So Sam will be out in that, and I think we're also going. I think next year as well, we're doing a paranormal, spooky UFO time in Nevada as well.
Oh, nice!
Going around doing the whole alien.
We're going to Roswell and stuff.
Yeah, I don't think we're going to do Roswell. We're doing like Area 51, Goldfield, Tonopah, Virginia City, and all them sort of places. All the old ghost towns.
Cool. Yeah. Roswell's a little far. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. So we're doing that. Have we got anything? Oh, we got another question for you from the chat room, James. Over to Sam.
Yeah, this is from Mal. Mally likes to read, so she's asking top 3 books she would like to read.
3 top books I'd like to read. So I would say my favorite book of them all is An Exorcist Tells a Story by Father Gabriel Morth. My second would have to be The Rite, because I love the movie. It's mostly because of the movie, but it is a good book. And 3, I would have to say it would be The Metaphysics of Evolution by Father Chad Ripperger, who is a lead exorcist with the Catholic Church and a psychologist, very smart man. Great book. It makes you think. It makes you think about the Big Bang Theory and evolution. But
what we'll do is we'll post, James, if you can send us a message once the show's over, we'll post it on our socials so everybody can see those copies of those books as well. So just in case they missed them live on air.
Of course.
So yeah, we'll get that done for you, Mel. So James, what's coming up for you? What have you got planned? Saying that, I know obviously at the moment everything's up in the air, but have you got any more talks planned, or are you just
So I'm pretty busy. Hopefully still, like I say, hopefully, I actually love doing the events. It's not, some people think it's the toot my own horn, but I really love meeting people and I love hearing experiences. But no, a lot of the events that I know are being rescheduled to some format, but I'm supposed to start getting kicked back until in July with Gettysburg Battlefield Bash, ran by Pam and Steve Barry
Yeah.
of the Gettysburg Ghost Exchange, and that's supposed to kick it off, I believe, for me, and then it's supposed to be steady. You know, I'm doing Plymouth Paracon for Sam Baltrusis, which is a great lineup, and many other events that can be found on Duo Demonology on Facebook or through jamesannitto.com, or you can even reach me. I'm not on Facebook right now due to personal preference, but you can also, crazily enough, I give my phone number out, and some people that are not UK listeners, hell, even if you want to reach me out on Skype, you can reach me on Skype, JAYANNITTO, or you can reach me at my phone number, 401-808-7416. Reach out to me, be respectable. But yeah, if you have any questions about events, books, whatever, I mentor people within demonology to a certain extent to get them started. So, reach out to me.
That's brilliant. That's great. And yeah, like I say, I can honestly say that I was transfixed on the talk when I saw you at Salem. It was so interesting. It was so like you say, when you go away from a talk and you're thinking, and you've got questions that you're actually thinking in your head, think, oh, that just made me look at something in a completely different light. That I think is very, very interesting, and that's what I loved about your talk, and that's why I wanted to get you on the air, and I am guaranteed we'll get you on a future date as well. So just want to personally, because it is coming up to the end of the show, want to personally say thanks a lot for coming on, James. We will post all the links, everything on there. So thanks again, James, for coming on, and we will be in touch soon. Thanks for all our listeners. Thanks everybody for taking part in the chat room. If there's any questions that you suddenly think of after the fact, let us know. Drop us a message. Post it to us, and we'll get it over James. And James has obviously given you his details as well, so you can post it direct to James. I'm sure he'll be happy to answer. We will be back next Thursday, 9 o'clock. Fingers crossed we don't have any little tech gremlins coming out to play again, because that'll be 2 weeks on the spin. And yeah, I'll pass you back over to Sam to close up the show.
Lastly, again, I'll reiterate what Carl says. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in again. If you obviously watched listen to the first bit of the show, which messed up. You will join us next week. As you've listened, we don't announce our guests now till Wednesday, which is on our Facebook page. And we will be making an announcement on Saturday, because we have been working closely behind the scenes to make the show better and reach more people. So it's a good night from Carl.
Good night, everybody. Thanks a lot.
Good night.
And it's a good night from me, guys.